Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I want to spend a bit of time this afternoon talking to you about international expansion. Um, why am I standing up here? First, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the company that I work for and some of the background and history that we have. So eDreams ODIGEO, we're a category leader in e-commerce. We're the largest retailer of flights in the world online. And we're 43 different countries globally. We've got a lot of growth in emerging markets and also some of the core major ones. We have 13 offices and about 1,500 employees from 50 different nationalities. And our headquarters are in Barcelona. And we have offices in London and Hamburg and Madrid, Paris, and many other ones. And in terms of size and scale, last year we had 14 million customers, and that's growing as well this year. In terms of brands, you've probably heard of some of these and not heard of others. So obviously we're a travel company specializing in flights. And we also sell insurance, hotels, rental cars, different things. In the UK we have Apodo, eDreams, in France, Go Voyage, Travel Link, and then a meta called ODIGEO.com. And brands are really important, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But just to give an idea as well of as you're expanding, it's about getting the right fit and the right brand into your market. Countries of operation, that's one thing that people tend to ask me quite a lot, is where did you expand to first and why? We started in Spain with eDreams, and we progressed from there to Italy. A lot of synergies, we had to change the language, but a lot of synergies in terms of the way people shop. From there we went to Portugal. And the reason we went to Portugal next is we found a lot of traffic coming to our site, a lot of acquisitions. A lot of the default for Portugal is if there's no Portuguese website, they use a Spanish site. So that was a very natural and obvious fit for us, was to then go to Portugal. The next country is then looking at where is Europe large. And for us, France, Germany, very big markets in Europe and also markets that use the euro. And from there we went and said, okay, let's keep progressing along the euro and let's then build a .com so we can now build out English-speaking sites. And we continued to build in that fashion. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about why we make decisions and where to make them and things to think about along the path. In terms of growth, just to give you a little bit of size, we grew 15 different markets since 2011. And this year we have also launched in Russia, and as well we've brought on board Apodo in Australia, and as well as Apodo in the Netherlands. Going forward, travel is double-digit growth. And again, this helps us to think about where we're going to go. It's growing massively, both online and offline, despite having air traffic control strikes and volcanoes and blizzards. We also have a lot of travels really being driven by, and I'd like to thank any colleagues from Facebook and Twitter and Instagram who really start to continue to get those holiday snaps out there and are very, very inspirational for travel. And similarly on the business side, as more companies start to grow and go internationally, there's more and more room for advancement there. Certainly for where we see in our category of next stages of growth, a lot of which is in South America. So Colombia, Peru, Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, a lot of growth in South America, and also a lot in Central and Eastern Europe, and similarly in Asia and in the Middle East. For me, I quite love this, actually, Charles Darwin, and I think this is very true about technology and about e-commerce, that it's not necessarily the strongest, it's not necessarily the most intelligent, it is the one that is most adaptable to change. And that is where driving in international markets, you have to be thinking about it. You have to be thinking about, what do we keep the same? How do we be really punchy and fast and aggressive and get there? But how do we also change and adapt and continue to be really nimble? And really, technology, technology I find is a real combination between you have the pure IT technologists who just want to code stuff and make it cool and drive it forward. And you've got the sales and marketing guys who want to go out there and promise and say we're going to do this and do that. And it's putting the two together and really understanding how do you drive more customers and how can technology really get behind that. For me, I remember my first foray into IT. I was working for an airline, and I used to design routes and where do we put planes and which planes do we buy, and I was a real finance person. And one day somebody gave me a Palm Pilot, and I thought, this is awesome. And I went in and I said to my manager, I need a transfer, I need to go in IT. And he said, well, why do you need to go in IT? And I said, well, the future is these handheld, pervasive devices. They're going to take us somewhere. And they said, okay, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, and I've never seen a Palm Pilot or a BlackBerry, but sure, go to IT, make it happen. So that's where I built in. And I really think that the core of the cycle of technology is also you have to have your leadership creating a roadmap. And you need to keep the customer in the center of that. And again, building on where do you go? How do you go into a new market? What makes sense? And testing. And anybody who works in IT, as you probably know, and especially the product guys, it's about A/B testing. I have no idea if people like pink or yellow or red or what makes people click the button in one market versus another market. Which fonts do people like? What are the pictures? Do they want lots of pictures? Do they want a few pictures? Do they want one great big picture? Do they want lots of tests? There's so many variables to go in and to explore and really understand what makes sense to a new market and not just making assumptions on the markets where you're successful today. The next, that is you build it in, you get your technology right, you put your 3 and 5 year roadmap together, you get your sales guys, your marketing guys. It's expensive, right? It's really expensive having commercials and having radio slots. Are they the right ones? Again, is it effective? It's the learning and the trying. It's building the revenue, build the growth. You get more customers, you have more revenue, you get better terms and suppliers, you can go back and reinvest, and again, back into technology and back into innovation and learning more about new markets. One of the first questions that I'm always asked is, how do you know where to start? Where do we go? Should we even expand? Is it the right time for us? Really, the very first thing, and you have to be really honest about with yourself and with your organization. And as much as we all want to get out there and just grow, really understanding where is our home market? Is our home market strong? Is it really strong? Because any holes and little gaps and cracks in the home market will be absolutely amplified anywhere beyond. Because then you go for the markets that you do know to the markets that you don't. And it's far more important to get it right at home first and get that functioning and strong rather than to go halfway in multiple markets and then have no traction going forward. Get it right, get it smooth, and then move along. The next is really understanding what makes your product unique. Why is it that a new market will want you there? What is it that you're there to offer and to sell to people? What is it that makes you unique? Are you better? Are you faster? Are you stronger? Are you cheaper? Do you have more quality? Do you have more options? What do you do better than anyone else? And that's to understand and then to help you sell. And similarly, really going through that SWOT analysis and looking at, again, what are the strengths and the weaknesses? What's the competition doing? What are the threats out there? And what are the opportunities? And then to look at scale. To leverage on the scale, to leverage on the know-how that you have, and then to further drive on that and improve profitability. If I look in my organization of what our USP is we are the best at flights in the world. We have better and more product than anybody else in the world. That is something that we can sell. And we very much stick to first off, what is our core beyond, and then building on that. And every time we go into a new market, it's not losing sight of what do we do best, and then going and capitalizing on that and making it happen in another market. So then another question that I get asked is, so again, what do you think about? What do you use for analysis? It really is much more about analysis and understanding, and really about the quantitative aspects, more so than emotion. Understanding where should we be going. So looking at the market size. Is it worth it for us to be going to a new market? penetration, online access. Is broadband available? Are people using it? Are people shopping? Are people buying? Again, what are the competitors doing? What's the landscape? Will we be the first in? Will we be the largest in? What will we be relative to everybody else? And taking that and quantifying whether market A or market B makes more sense to us at this time. Also things like political risk, all kinds of factors to evaluate when you're going into a new market. Another really important one is make it easier on yourselves, especially if it's in new markets to expand to and you've never gone international before. Pick the ones, again, understanding what is going to be easier and closest to your own market. What are the things that are similar so you can get synergies and expand from there? Never forget about legal and regulatory. And we've all seen tax dodgers, for example. You see it in the UK, of which organizations, and I won't call anybody out, but what have you seen in the news lately around companies that have avoided paying tax? And what happens is, once, especially if you're new in a market, and you start to build bad reputation, it's very, very quickly for your market share to decline. And it's very difficult to pick that up again. So do the homework first. Same with ethics. GlaxoSmithKline, as an example. Just recently they were fined, I think it was 300 million pounds for bribery in China. Again, it's about doing business and doing it right. And the regulators will find you if you're not playing well. And it can be an absolute showstopper sometimes. To going into a new market. So absolutely do the homework. And again, reusability. I talked a little bit about this before. Take the common technology elements and build on them. Make it easier on yourselves. There are lots of other things to focus on beyond technology in a new market that are really critical to getting it right. So reuse what you can. Adapt to fit. Expansion, and even in the home market, as you'll all know, that a big piece is driving repeat sales and driving referrals and driving growth more so than just the one single transaction. So in an international market, it's really important, again, of doing the homework. What is it that customers want in the new market that might be different from your home market? It could be, if I look at my own business, it could be price. It might be convenience of flights. It might be they prefer Asian carriers or North American carriers or European carriers. How are we going to sort that? How do you sort? How do you sell? What creates value? What's important to people in terms of quality? Is it speed? Is it proximity? And so on. Is it endorsements? In a new market, you can't just make the assumptions that it's going to be the same as the market that you're in right now. So it can be building on technology. In my company, we have a lot of in-house technology. Again, we reuse it. And then what we do is say, okay, many companies actually have common shared platform. They try to have one platform. And many of the ones who have lots and lots of platforms tend to be because of the way they've grown or because they're run locally. But it makes it very difficult to be nimble. So as much as you can, build on one common platform and then be flexible around how you do display and how you do sell. It's also understanding different local buying nuances. Really important, again, some of them seem like obvious, but it may have seasonality. You have Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. What's winter, what's summer? What are you selling on your websites? Are you selling snow tires in the middle of summer? It doesn't make any sense. Similarly, religious considerations, cultural considerations, income and spending levels. I think right now the average online purchase in Russia it's under £20. So think about, as you're going into different markets, again, finding the right price points to be able to get, do you need to sell 3 of something at 50,000 to break even? Or are you in a volume game where you want to send 50,000 at £10 a shot and then build on there? So understanding what makes sense. And getting customer service right is really important as well. This is one where, and you probably all feel it yourselves every day, when you call a customer support line, it's what are the times of day? And what is it that do you want different languages? Do you get good enough support? If you've offshored, are your customers happy with it? Do you need evening service? Do you need morning service? Do you need weekend service? Understanding all those different bits and pieces. And again, in a brand new market, it's understanding what is important in that market rather than what do you actually know. I chose 3 companies that I think do really well, actually, at being adaptable. And I'm sure you all know every single one of this. McDonald's. McDonald's, and if you go to McDonald's in London, is different than if you go to Munich and they sell McRoyale and McBeer, and if you go to Japan and they have these very cool black buns and with sesame and all kinds of different things in them. You go to Russia, again, very different. Turkey, different choice of products. Same idea. They're building on their brand. They're building on their core products, but they're finding what are the things that are different in each market. Coca-Cola, another one. As simple as that in Europe, here we have Coca-Cola Light. You go to North America, it's Diet Coke. They're taking the same thing. The flavors are slightly different in every single country to adjust to the palate of what locals want and what's interesting, building on their same home formula, different sizes of bottles, cans versus bottles, plastic versus glass. What makes sense to build and expand? Pampers is another one, Procter & Gamble. They have an entire team of designers that build the packages for Pampers. And that comes down to everything from which colors do they use, which words, how old do they put the baby, is the baby smiling, is the baby crawling, what do they have in terms of endorsements. Every single country, Procter & Gamble does a phenomenal amount of research to understand what do we need to put on the Pampers packages to sell diapers in a new market. This might sound really obvious, but make it easy for people to spend money. There are 3 reasons why people come to your website. One is to do research, one is to just shop around, and the third is to actually buy stuff. 1's okay, 2's not bad. Number 3 is where you want people to be. You want them, if you've got a site and if you've got a product, you want to be able to sell it. So the first thing is to have a good display that ropes them in and a call to action. I need to have that, I don't know, corkscrew / bottle opener / pizza slicer that self-cleans. I don't know, but I need to have it right now and I need to buy it immediately. You need to get that call to action for people to come and want to buy your product. Not tomorrow, not to keep shopping, to buy it from your site and to buy it now. Make it enticing. Hook them. The next is currency. Again, this is one where going into new markets for ourselves, we started with the euro. And we started as building one currency. We went into different markets. But then it was something simple where our front end, our back end, our mid-office, all of our different elements, all of our technology worked together because we didn't have to mess around with currency. As we then went into new markets, we went from the euro to then in the pound. Where we sell the euro, we have the euro sign is at the end, and we have the numeric price at the beginning. The pound, we had to move it. We had to change the technology to display it. You have Jordan, for example, Kuwait, Tunisia, three decimal places in the dinar. Can you actually, if you're going into those markets, again, they might sound like great markets for you, but if your technology can't support it and you don't have the currency, either fix your technology and change it, or perhaps consider going somewhere else. But so many things to not just make assumption on, because if you don't have the currency, people can't buy it. Collection and payments. For me, there is absolutely nothing worse than you've built your platform, you have great product, you have people come to your site, they want to buy it, they're hooked, you've sold them, they're there, they've got their wallet out, they're ready to buy, they get to that payment page, and you don't accept the card that they want to use. It's crippling. And so that, again, it's really doing the research. It might be, in some markets, credit card and debit card are fantastic. Add in PayPal. How much more than traction can you get? What other markets are, they want installments to be able to pay in multiple steps. Other markets, it's bank transfer. In India, it's web money, or in Russia, web money is really popular. China, I believe it's Alipay. And it's getting it right, because otherwise you can only scoop up a small amount of the business. And as I said, for me, that's an absolute disaster and the worst place to fail beyond fraud. Fraud is the other one of having great systems. There will always be a certain amount of fraud. If you're selling internationally, if you're selling online, and it's having the protection in place. It could be things like 3D Secure. It could be having transactions go offline. It could be configuring around IP. It can be lots of different things. But it's around finding the balance between not destroying your conversion and having the right elements in place to not just put the money in the tank because you thought you sold something, but somebody was ripping you off. Fulfillment is another one. Again, depending what you're selling, it's you either have a product or your service, and you need to be able to fulfill that to the customer. For me, the first time I went and did business in China, I pitched up in Beijing and went into our call center and said, right, you guys are doing fantastic, but everybody's on the phone, and there were heaps and heaps of envelopes, and there was about a mile of bicycles. And I asked them, what is this all about? And they said, well, actually, in China, we're not quite there yet where we can give people e-tickets. So what we do is we have these bike couriers, and we print off the tickets, and we put them in envelopes, and then we have these bike couriers that go all over China and all over Beijing, and they deliver the tickets, and they collect the cash, and then we come back, and we put it on a bike, and then the people go on their trip, and they're really happy. Wow. I thought this is an online company, but this is how we have to do fulfillment. And it was learning on what are the steps and what is it that's acceptable in a marketplace. Everybody else was doing e-tickets and pop up, and you get in and you show your your iPhone and scan it in. Not here. Here it was bike couriers and collecting cash. So again, what is the marketplace that you're going to, and what do you need to do? And then the last one that I touched on before is customer service. Really understanding what are the expectations in a new market, what do customers really want, and ensuring that you're delivering on that consistently. Another thing that can really destroy a business, especially in a new market, is getting bad press. And where people really hit the press, and you see it a lot, is you call up the journalists and you call up the consumer activists and you say, I was supposed to get this service and I didn't get it, and somebody writes in and a journalist calls you up. In a brand new market, again, really get that right and really pay attention to the details, because that's what's going to help bring you sales, market share, return purchases. Whenever I talk to leaders, it's interesting. Anybody I've ever asked about how are your markets doing and where have they grown internationally, the number one thing that people say beyond that technology is the culture. And culture really counts. In a new market, really understanding what is it that works in a workplace? What is it that's really critical? It's what are the norms? Locally, industry, company, and paying attention and not being so, I'll use the word, I'm not sure whether it's confident or arrogant to go in and expect that another market's going to be the way that you think it is. The first time for me that I went to do business in Japan, I will admit it was an epic fail. We went in and we said, great, hi, how are you doing? Let's do this, let's do that. They looked at us and it just didn't happen. The next time, about 2 years later, we said, let's try this again. We put a man on the ground. We said, please tell us what we need to do. Teach us. How do we do business in Japan? How do we communicate with people? And we spent a lot of time investing in how does the workplace need to work? How does the culture? How do you do business in making partners and in working with people? And there were incredible lessons to learn. The other is building teams, ground up, M&A. It's unbelievable the difference when you have culture embedded in corporate cultures. You've often, I did one where I was merging two companies together. It was two big airlines, and it was very much the red team and it was the blue team. And it was like this when we first started out. And it was understanding and talking to people of what makes you tick. One was English Canadian from the West Coast, one was French Canadian from the East Coast, one was government run, one was public. Putting them together, they cared about whether you had Pepsi or Coke in the vending machines. It was unbelievable. We had to start by just painting the tails of the airplanes to get people to talk to each other and work together. They hated their neighbor because we merged them together. It takes a lot of time to get there. And having really good leaders, especially as you're going into new markets, starting with somebody who knows your company well and your business well, somebody who's got the contacts in your company to get things done. And then bringing a team up as well who understands the local markets and putting the two together to really get the synergies and the harmonies, and then building more over time, try and get most of the expats out and really let it become a local business and thrive on its own. This is, and I'm getting the 5-minute sign, so I also wanted to talk a little bit more about context and listening of communication. And again, it's absolutely vital, understanding that some cultures, Japan, Saudi, China, Spain even, they don't tell you directly what they're looking for. There's a lot of hidden meetings and understanding of what's said and what's not said, the body language, whereas you have, most of the Europeans, and certainly as a Canadian and many Americans as well, and we just say it. We say, look I think this would be better. This is working fantastic. Why don't we try this? Guys, not a big fan of that. We talk about it. Other cultures, there's much more context around what changes are and what it's going to be effective. And again, it's really, if there's one thing I can say, if you're going into a new market, again, learn about the market, learn about how people communicate, learn what are the subtle nuances, because that is what will either, if you've read the example, it's what either will keep the plane in the air or it's when it's crashed the plane that's out of fuel, is listening to what are people actually telling me and what are all the nuances with it. If I get to really talking about plan the long game, this is really just a summary of the last 30 minutes. Plan the long game, understand where you're going. Have tools, have technology that are resilient, that are adaptive, that have your core business set and solid, but know what are the little tweaks to do to go into a new market. Take the time to do it right. Don't sacrifice the quality, but take the time to build it. Have a roadmap, have a 3-year, have a 5-year plan, know where you're going, and hire the right people. And that's not just the people who are necessarily like you, and not just exporting people who are great in the market that you're currently in, but hire the right people for the new market. Understand the cultures of the new market. And learn about it. Does your USP fit? Have an effective and sales marketing team. They really are at the heart of the growth. Again, to get your brands known, to get your brands out there, to tweak the brands, to get them right, to focus on how do you advertise, how do you do your creatives, what makes sense. Get the regulations right, listen to the regulations, read about them, and develop influential context in a new market. That's really going to help bring you forward. Assumptions can be really costly. Ask and engage. And commit to making it work, even when it's difficult. There's always a way to make it work if you're listening and if you're learning. If you've got the results and you're setting KPIs. Listen, learn, adapt, and repeat over and over and over again. And there's actually, just this morning, I thought I'd pop this in. I was listening to the radio on the way to work this morning, and there was a commercial for greatbusiness.gov.uk. And I thought that can be a really helpful website for people. They have a few little guidelines as well as to going abroad and working internationally. And most of all, be brave. Absolutely, for me, Ernest Shackleton is one of my absolute heroes, and his trips into the South Pole. And I think this says it really well, that superhuman effort isn't worth a damn unless it achieves results. So good luck, and thank you.